Hey everyone, I'm Albert Boris. And guess what? Kart World is finally getting more knockout tour rallies after over a year of release. And that is great news for two reasons. One, it means that Knockout Tour is finally earning back its well-deserved luster, after how repetitive it got with just 8 rallies. But two, it also means I finally have an excuse to do what I like best on this channel again: predicting. So far, we have 2 new rallies added a few days ago already, the Drill and Boomerang Rallies, but as amazing as they are, literally they're the best ones so far, we still have 6 more to come as well, likely throughout the next year, Booster Course Pass style. And if you know anything about me in the Booster Course Pass, you can probably imagine how nostalgic this update made me.
Dude, it's only been, what, 3 years? What's next? Is Metroid Prime 4 also nostalgic?
I mean, okay, that is too personally, but 3 years ago, I had only just graduated from school. A lot has happened in the years since, which is why the schedule not only flashbanged me with a lot of fond memories, but I also knew I wanted to predict what routes these remaining rallies will go through. Will I be correct on anything? Maybe, probably not. However, for as much as it's up in the air for what they'll do, there are a few patterns we can go off, which gives us some ground to make guesses on. Take a look at the currently existing rallies, for example, and see what they have in common. That's right, nothing. No starter and ender track is the same, and every route is a completely unique experience as well. Some intermission tracks may be shared on a base level between rallies, like how Peach Stadium to Cheep Cheep Falls is in both the Ice and Acorn rallies, but they're still set apart by being in reverse order from each other and being set at different times of day. Heck, even none of the Grand Prix routes are repeated here further than this. And why wouldn't it be like this? If a rally exists, it should be to offer something distinct. Which is why in this video, I'm also gonna try and give a lot of focus to tracks that haven't been in Knockout Tour much. For all we know, this pattern could be a pure coincidence I'm looking too deeply into, but if it's not, it at least gives us a solid base to stand on. It's got pretty tight, coming up with which routes would make the most organic and interesting journey, while also remembering which ones were already used. However, I was still able to come up with 6 different marathons despite all of this, and of the 6 tracks I thought deserved the most to be the enders too. But no, before anyone asks, none of them are gonna be f***ing Rainbow Road. I like it, but it is way too long and straightforward to warrant any symbolic excuse, and it's just gonna drag out whatever rally it's a part of. I mean, maybe if the whole track was its own rally, it could kinda work, but it's also only half the length of any regular rally, so yeah, I'd rather not. But yeah, beyond that, everything is on the table. So with all that being said, I say, let's finally knock out some tour predictions. The first of the 6 upcoming rallies, I believe, is going to be called the Egg Rally, carrying primarily a tropical vacation theme. Starting from Crown City, we first make our way to Koopa Troopa Beach. Koopa Beach is not only a track that hasn't seen much representation yet for this mode, being only featured in the Bizarre Cherry Tour, but more importantly, it's also the track which had all its routes get drastically upgraded back in the 1.4 update. Yeah, remember when that happened? What a wonderful surprise. Because of all the effort that went into them, it feels only reasonable that any of them have to get used for this purpose at some point, to make that work pay off. And this one specifically, I think would make for a great opener, like you're going on a vacation out of the big city. And to speak of the Cherry Rally, because the next route is gonna be the roadway to Dino Dino Jungle. Not really much of a reason here, see it as a way to slowly amp up the excitement of this tropical trip. Otherwise, we're just passing through here by necessity, so that we can make our way to Great Question Block Ruins next. However, not the traditional way you go in the Banana Cup. If you look at a map for the game, you can see that there's actually 2 paths that go from here to there. And while what we're gonna be taking is a pretty obvious detour, I say it's good we drag out the time, because the next checkpoint is also gonna be earlier, right when we enter the lagoon. Now you may be thinking, don't we need to cross the lap gate at the track for it to count? No, absolutely not. There are already plenty of pre-existing rallies that have lap gates not even close to the tracks they're tied to, like the Keep Passing the Spiny Rally. So we know Nintendo is pretty liberal about this, and thank Christ for that. But yeah, what happens next is that we're not even gonna go up to the track. Instead, we're gonna make a drastic left turn here and cruise along the river that eventually culminates in a waterfall. This route in particular is one of the coolest in the entire game, and one I never even knew existed until designing this, which made it another obvious inclusion on my side that I think would set the tone immaculately for the last act. Eventually, as the sun would fall, we make our way to Faraway Oasis, where we once again make a full turn away from the lap gate, and then finally begin our last route, along hilly steps and river roads, until we reach our final destination in Salty Salty Speedway. This way, as the night finally falls, we end in a city like we began from one, only this time it's a tropical resort town, and with all sorts of parkour possible. It would be a beautiful ending narratively, as much as it would also be logical from a difficulty standpoint. And that is the Egg Rally. To be honest, probably the one I'm the most satisfied with at the end of the day. But they also made it intentionally more relaxed in nature, so as to not upstage what comes after. Next, Rally 2 up for predicting, I'm gonna be calling the Turnip Rally, which is gonna take us on a journey from blistering cold to torrid heat. And if you guessed on Starview Bleak opening us up based on that description, you're absolutely right. This first route is gonna take us to Dandelion Depths, along this icy mountain path. Not much unlike how the Spiny Rally opens up. In fact, this is also gonna start at night. The main difference is we turn left here, instead of right to Boo Cinema, and after arriving at the Dandelion Lap Gate, we now head on our way to Moo Moo Meadows. Yeah, this wasn't really on my wish list, but since it is in the dead center of the map, it's kind of unavoidable. Good news is, this is the only Moo Moo Meadows route I have in my predictions, and for what's worth, this route specifically at least has this cool shortcut over the cliffside, so it could be worse. After Moo Moo Meadows, as the sun begins to rise though, we then head on our way to Toad's Factory, which is, unfortunately, very reminiscent of its route lead up in the Lightning Cup. I mean, at least it's a different time of day. Again, this is just out of necessity. From here on out, we get the reason why this rally really exists at all as an idea for me. Right after crossing the lap gate, instead of heading onward into the factory, we make a sharp left turn into the water as we now go toward Wario Stadium. Not the dingy canal route that was in the Acorn Rally, rather we take the land route, which initially resembles the road to Bowser's Castle, but right before the gates to it, we turn left and drift along this shorter route. It's kinda basic on its own, but it allows us to enter the stadium from the back, which is important because from here on out, we're able to jump over its big gap and also exit it from the west. And from there, it is only a matter of minutes until we reach destination Shy Guy Bazaar. And not just Shy Guy Bazaar, but specifically the Daisy's Palace variant, which can only be played from this direction. The fact that this variant is not a part of anything in this game, despite all the effort it went into it, always perplexed me upon first learning about its existence. So I'd be shocked if they don't include it as part of a bigger journey now. Sure, the main Shy Guy Bazaar track is more technical and would probably make for the more skillful finale, but I think the latter's exclusivity is of much higher priority. And that's the Turnip Rally, which is probably the sloppiest of my ideas, but hey, I told you, it got tight, and unfortunately, this one ended up taking a stick with a shorter end. Rally number 3 is gonna be the Bubble Rally, emblemized by another Mario Wonder power-up. Just because, why not? This time, we start off by diving down from the heights of Great Question Block ruins, as we first make our way through a pretty standard roadway to Salty Speedway. Nothing insane here, unless Nintendo mayhaps add some new cool elements like a vine stalk. Otherwise, this is just a way to set the tone for this both water and altitude themed tour. Because to speak of it, right after crossing Salty Speedway, we make a drastic right turn from the lap gate, and turn ourselves towards the wavy waters of Wario's Galleon. So far, this is a track that has only acted as a beginning and end for rallies, which is why I wanted to give it a different role for once. And same for what comes after too. After crossing the lap gate at Galleon, we're gonna head straight on and drive up some new tour-style ramps here that will immediately take us back the same way we got. It was either that or make a full lap around the track, which seemed unnecessary. And this time, we're gonna head up the Sky High Sunday, the same route we take in the Star Cup to here, but reversed. This way, we get another taste of what's supposed to be the altitude-themed aspect of this rally, plus another perspective to another forgotten knockout tour track, and once we make it here, we're gonna go up another tour-style ramp here, to allow us to naturally drive through the beginning of this track backwards, so that from there on, we then head on to our 5th checkpoint at the D-Key Pass. To be honest, not exactly the track I wanted to have so late in a rally, atmospherically, but you know what, the route leading up to it has this cool ice cave with chill bulls at least. Otherwise, this track's role is to act as the final calm before storm as the sun begins to set, as after this, we can finally pave way to the final track, which has both water and altitude, Cheep Cheep Falls, which is only one of the most frantic Mario Kart courses ever, and would make for a wave-shattering ender, I think. Most likely, I also imagine this rally would be controversial as a result, since the reception for this track in general isn't really the greatest for its water physics, but to that I would say, get better. Why shouldn't the finale be challenging for you to win? So yeah, and with that, we wrap up the 3rd of my rally predictions. Definitely one I try to go my way out of to include more obscure tracks, which I hope will be appreciated. Now, from Rally 4 and onward, my predictions are gonna get a little more consistently crazy as far as routing goes, I hope. Something which will hopefully be represented emblematically well too, starting with the Rock Rally. This one will take us on a trip from lush greens to fiery wastelands, starting us from faraway oasis to Koopa Beach. Another route which is effectively just the reverse from a Grand Prix one, but this one has the cool difference where an entire huge turn is shortcutted by a glider across the waters. Overall, I just think it would be an energetic start to the journey, without blowing the load too early. Once we arrive at Koopa Beach, we're gonna go through yet another one of the revamped water intermissions, this time the most ambitious of them all, leading to Peach Stadium. I golly goo if it isn't the most dynamic straight line there is in the game, with all its ramps, sea creatures in the way, and even vine stalks you can grind and alternate between. Plus, in the context of the rally, it also allows us to enter Peach Stadium from an entirely new direction, culminating in this massive ramp for a lap gate. After that, we turn left upon reaching the main crossroad, and for our third section, head toward Chaco Mountain. Unfortunately, a repeat route reversed from the Acorn Rally, but one we're gonna have to stomach, just because there is no other way. After that, from Chaco Mountain, as the sun begins to set, we're still continuing the same Acorn path, now heading to Wario Stadium, but while this is another repeat route but reversed, this one at least has marginally more unique scenery to make up for it, enhanced by the fact that it wouldn't be pitch black night now. More importantly, however, Wario Stadium is necessary for how it will build up for the finale, because from here, as night falls, we now make the daunting challenging trek through wastelands, castle gates, and hot springs that eventually culminate in the split path hell of Dry Bones Burnout. As far as I'm considered, this is only one of the best tracks to come out of the entire game, and one I think would do an immaculate job ending off a marathon as well, with all its insanity. And that wraps up the Rock Rally. To me, this would definitely be one of my more enjoyed tours if it ended up happening, for all its unique scenery and wild gameplay elements. But in the meantime, let's move on to the fifth rally, which I'm going to be referring to as the Feather Rally, which can, in the best possible nutshell, be explained as being an overglorified mushroom cup for this game. What do I mean by this? You'll see. To start off though, for the first and only time in my predictions, I'm gonna set the beginner location at a track which has already actually served this role once. Shy Guy Bazaar. The first route will have us going to Mario Bros Circuit, but instead of taking the normal road, which you do in the Cloud Rally, we're gonna swerve along a completely different path, circling around its northern outskirts before we even enter it. I want to take as much advantage of this game's lesser explored roadways as I can, especially routes that we don't even traverse in regular versus mode. And since we now arrive at this track from the back, we're also gonna take an entirely new path to Wario Stadium, our next track, along this canyon highway until a tour ramp shows up right about here, from which we glide to the big arena. And we're not gonna stop with unconventional roads there either. From there, we hit the Chaco Mountain by first heading slightly in the opposite direction until we reach this pipe bridge that looms dangerously close to Toad's factory. And from there, it's just straight on south until Choco Island 2. Unfortunately, after that, there aren't that many unique routes to pick from for the next track. We're gonna head down to Crown City along this highway, which has already been half used prior, but we'll have to deal with it. Because from there, as the sun begins to set, it is now time to drift along some coastal roads, for about a minute or so, until we reach our final destination at DK Spaceport. And all of this is why this rally is the Mushroom Cup Deluxe of Knockout Tour. Imagine how cool it would be to end a marathon with this long obstacle course to the top. It's lengthy, but not unreasonably so like Rainbow Road, and even if I don't even like this track that much personally, having a build-up like this to it makes all the difference still for how I feel racing on it. Which is why I still think this track deserves to be an ender regardless. And with that, that puts the Feather Rally to a close. Definitely one I'd plenty enjoy if it ended up being real, just for all the unconventional routes you take. Now, all we have left to predict is the grand finale kingpin of all Knockout Tour rallies. But it's not gonna be with Rainbow Road. Jesus Christ, I swear if that's what Nintendo actually does. No, instead, the Bell Rally, as I'm gonna call it, I predict is gonna amp up the chaos in other ways, even if it may not be much more finalistic than some other already existing tours. I mean, you can't really get more climactic than ending with Bowser Castle or Peach Stadium anyways. The best we can do is at least start off a bang though, from Dry Bones Burnout to Acorn Heights. What better way to set the tone than to open up on the most hostile of wastelands on this map in the middle of the night. Even if we on this route transition fairly quickly into more habitable woods, it's still not gonna feel that much less dramatic as you sliver down this huge slope for well about a minute. Once we're finally down, we make a right turn here so as to not properly enter Acorn Heights, and pass through the lap gate, which will be at this big lake's entrance. From there, we head almost straight through it, along with even more hilly woods thereafter, which eventually start to transition into something spookier. That's when you suddenly arrive at the Ghost Valleys, at which Boost Cinema's lap gate will open up with it. There you get to drift along some of its boardwalks, before making it up the big stairs exiting out of it. From there, we head on to Mario Circuit on this highway, as the night finally fades to day, and after passing that, now venture to Toad's Factory on this unconventional highway. I say unconventional because the entrance to Toad's Factory is going to be through the back, on its rooftops, which is also going to be where the lap gate resides for dramatic effect. It would be an absolutely badass entrance to this track. No less because we never approached this track from this side otherwise. But once we jump off, we then turn left away from the finish line as we begin our trek to our final destination in all of Knockout Tour. Through another highway, more wastelands, and eventually the walls of Bowser Castle. Eventually, as the sun also begins to set, we finally make it to Airship Fortress. I may not really be much of a fan for this track personally, and to play the devil's advocate, I do worry that this course may be so short and fast paced, it might barely even get time to properly register for you by the time you finish the marathon. However, even so, I still think it could make for a really climactic finale, with its dangerous atmosphere and hostile set pieces everywhere. And besides, with only 4 people, it also wouldn't be nearly as overcrowded as it is in versus mode, so I'd be more than willing to give it a chance for this role too. And with that, I've made a prediction for every single one of Kart World's upcoming 6 Knockout Tour rallies. Was this a challenging task? Absolutely, but it was also incredibly fun to try and decipher which possible routes Nintendo might be planning to give us in the future. And considering how tight it got with the rules I imposed on myself, hey, maybe I'll get something right. There are some things I would have liked to predict, but ultimately found no place for. I initially wanted more checkpoints for Boost Cinema and Acorn Heights, not to mention I think Wario Stadium could have made for a neat ender. In fact, maybe even Toad's Factory, but you know what, considering we do a full lap on that in the Moon Rally anyways, I realized it was obviously not of priority. But with all that being said, what do you think the upcoming rallies will be? Do you also have predictions? Let me know all of them down below in the comments, and we'll see if some of you maybe even end up being right too. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like and hit that subscribe button as I yap on about even more related things on my channel. In the meantime, follow me on my Discord server, Greenpipe City as well for more updates, and now I'll be signing off until next time.